Hey everybody, do you have trouble sleeping at night? Is it because you've got too much light that comes through your blinds? Do you have a street light outside, or maybe a neighbor who's got a back porch light that they just won't turn off, leaks in, it's in your eyes all night long? In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to install your own blackout curtains that will completely block all of the light coming through the window so you can sleep at night. So these curtains were not very expensive. We got them on Amazon, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds to choose from. When you're shopping, you will want to know the height of your wall, and you'll also want to know the height of your window. There are a lot of opinions about how high your curtains should be mounted on the wall, and we chose this particular size because that's the one we liked. We like the way it looks on the wall, we like how close to the ceiling they are, and we like that they come all the way down and almost just barely touch the carpet. But you may choose something completely different. But the main thing you want to make sure you're shopping for is the word blackout. Now, blackout curtains don't have to be black or even dark colored. They sell white blackout curtains. Blackout just means it completely blocks all of the light that's going to come through the window. And that'll help your room stay darker, and then you should be able to sleep better. So the first thing you need to do is to take two different measurements of your curtains. The first is how tall are the curtains in their entirety, in our case 95 inches. And the second is how far off the ground is the top of the grommet going to be, and in our case that's 94 inches. You'll use these measurements to determine how far up the wall to hang your bar so that your curtains hang in the correct position for your window. Speaking of where you're going to place the bar, these are the mounting brackets I'm going to be using for hanging my bars. These came with the bars, and they're real simple, just a right angle with two screws and a set screw that goes into the ring that's going to hold the bar. That set screw will keep the bar from sliding back and forth as you slide your curtains. As you can see, the curtain rod just fits right into the middle of the ring, and there are two holes for screws for the mounting. Now that I know the height of the curtains and how the brackets are configured, I can go ahead and measure up my wall to determine exactly where I want to mount the brackets so that the rod winds up in the correct height. My goal here, and this is just a personal preference, is to get the curtains to hang right at the carpet line. I don't want them up the wall, and I don't want them dragging on the floor. Next, I measure the width of the window to make sure that the rod is going to fit, and then measure the width of the rod to make sure that there's going to be enough overhang on both sides of the window that I can completely open the curtains. Having verified that, now I'm ready to mark the installation location for my brackets. I do that by using a level to go straight up from the edge of my window and then measure over just a couple of inches based on the width of my bar. How far over you need to measure will be determined by how wide your bar is and where you want to mount your brackets. I do the same procedure on the other side of the wall, using my level to make sure that I'm perfectly in line with the edge of the window. I measure up the correct distance and then measure over the right amount for my rod. These distances, of course, are going to vary based on the size of the rod in your window and the height of your curtains that you're installing. This mark that I'm making is to indicate where I would like the top of my rod to fall, which is where the top of the grommets will be, so that my curtains are the correct length off of my floor. It's important to note, though, that this is not necessarily the spot to put your top screw. In fact, if you look at the anchors here, you can see that the top screw hole is actually closer to in line with the bottom of the ring of the anchor, not the top. Speaking of screws, this is what came with my rod, and I'm planning to use them for the mounting. Additionally, the kit came with these little drywall anchors. Now, personally, I think these are not very good, and so if I need to use drywall anchors, I will be using this kind instead. I purchased these separately at my local big box store. They're made of metal and are rated to hold a lot more weight and should last longer. But I'm not sure I necessarily need these anchors yet, because there is a good chance that I will be able to get these anchored into a stud in the wall. Keep in mind that there is going to be a little bit of a height differential between where the top of your screw goes and where the top of your anchor actually lies. You'll just need to do some measuring and some quick math to figure out exactly how far up or down you need to adjust your screw to get the top of your rod to be exactly where you want it on the wall. I measure carefully the offset from where I'd like the top of my rod to be to where the top screw needs to be screwed in, and make a new mark on the wall exactly where I want my top screw to be installed. Then just hold the bracket up to the wall and use the holes that are in it as a template to mark where you want to drill your screw holes. Now in my case, since my brackets are being installed pretty close to the edges of my windows, I was hopeful that I would land on a stud, and as it turned out, I did land on a stud on the edges of the window, as you can see based on the results of using my stud finder on the wall. Now I don't fully trust my stud finder, so I drilled small pilot holes first into my hole to make sure that they actually did hit a stud, and they did. Once the pilot holes are in, then I start by putting the top screw into the bracket, but don't screw it in all of the way yet, because that top hole will allow for a little bit of up and down movement to accommodate the lower screw's position. So then install the lower screw and snug it down, and then come back and tighten the top screw. And in my case, I needed to remove the little set screw from the ring, so just reinstall that once the bracket is attached to the wall. Once the brackets on either side of the window have been installed, you might need to install a middle bracket if your window is wide. To do this, I start by measuring the exact distance from the outside edge of one bracket to the outside edge of the other bracket, and then marking the exact center between the two. To get the correct height, I use my level again to make sure that I'm perfectly level with the edge of the right bracket, and go across until I meet that line in the center that I've just marked to indicate the exact center between the two brackets. Using the level in this way, I ensure that my middle bracket will be at the exact same height as the outer brackets. I then repeat the same procedure for marking my holes, and this time using the stud finder, it looks like I'm not going to be on a stud, so I will need to use my drywall anchors. Before I just assume that and drill a big hole for the anchors, I start with a small pilot hole just in case, because my stud finder can be unreliable sometimes. In this case though, it was correct, and I do need to drill the larger holes for these brackets. These brackets are really easy to use. Once the larger hole is drilled, just tap them in lightly with a hammer. And then you screw them in all the way until they're snug, which expands the portion inside the wall, affixing it to the drywall on both sides. Then just unscrew the screw from the anchor, and now you've got holes that are ready to receive the screws for the bracket. Again, put in the top screw a little bit loose, then put in the bottom screw tight, and then snug down the top screw. Once your brackets are installed, the hard part's over. In my case, the rod comes in two pieces, so I install the left side first and then the right. Don't lock down those set screws yet though, because I'm going to need to be able to remove these again to install the curtains. To hang the curtains, it's easiest if you can line up all the grommets at once so you can hold them all in one hand, and then just slide the entire curtain side onto the one side of your rod. Now in the case of my rod, I wanted to make sure that the outermost grommets were going to be on the outside of those brackets. This will ensure that the outer edge of the curtains always stay pinned to the far sides of the window. So to do that with this rod, I can just unscrew the end caps, then slide the rod a little bit, just enough that I can pull off the outer grommet, then slide the rod back through its bracket and reattach the end cap. Then I just repeat the procedure on the other side, lining up all of the grommets, sliding the entire panel of the curtain onto the rod at once, reattaching the rod to the center section, then removing the end cap, slide this little section of the rod over, pull off that end grommet, and then slide the rod back. Now I can go ahead and lock down that set screw in the middle, put the end grommet over the end of the rod, and reinstall the end cap. That's all there is to it. These curtains are installed, and they look great. I was really surprised by just how effective these are at blocking out the extra light that comes in. I thought that our blinds were doing a pretty good job, but these curtains really do a great job of actually darkening the room, and I think they look good. So there are several different kinds of styles of curtain rods and grommets and attachments and things, but most of what I've covered in this video will apply to just about every kind as far as getting the height correct for your bar and using the correct mounting procedures for attaching your mounting hardware to the wall. As I said at the beginning of this video, there are literally thousands of designs and patterns to choose from when it comes to selecting your curtains. Just make sure that if you're looking for ones that will make your room dark, that you use the word blackout when you're searching. to ensure that they are going to actually darken your room. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you found it informative and that you were able to learn a little something. If you noticed something that I could have done better, please let me know down in the comments. And thanks for watching.